you've got all the roots into that, which is a bit messy, and you've got to tear the root off to repot it. Otherwise you lose a lot of compost space. So generally speaking, I wouldn't be using it. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Yes.
And the camellia, can it live for a long time?
The question is about camellias. Can they live a long time in a pot? I've had one in a pot which is about this size for 15 years. I don't know how long it's long. The problem is that when you get a big plant in quite a small pot, you can't really go away for the weekend unless you set up one of these automatic watering systems. You know, camellias fibrous rooted, much the same with things like bay and box. Even yew, anything has a very fibrous sort of root system. That they will survive in pots for a very long time. I have a blueberry, for example, which has been in a pot for at least 15 years. It's taller than me now. The pot is about that wide. But now I need to water it pretty well every day. You know, the last job before I left home yesterday evening was to water that well, and as soon as I get back tomorrow morning, it will need another watering. So that when you've got big old plants in relatively small containers, yes, a number of the fibrous rooted kinds will live for a very long time. I mean, Japanese maples will live, once you've got them established in a really good root system, they'll live for years in a container. The bonsai treatment is the proof of that, you know, where people are keeping quite big, really old trees in tiny containers. But for most of us that do have 2 or 3 days away now and again, perhaps don't have a perfect neighbour, then the hose lock aquapod system, if you have the patience to set it up, is an absolute godsend. A long time ago, I had an SOS call from my editor on the paper. Would I go and help Barbara Windsor with her garden? She had a tiny mews house in the West End of London. She spent £15,000 having the back garden landscaped. The back garden was not as big as this area here, and about 12 feet deep. And the designer had built some really beautiful tanks. It wasn't Dermot Gavin, but it could well have been. And had them full of water with under lighting, you know, which after dark was fine, except when you switch the lights on, all the lights in the house fused. And the water was leaking from the tanks and all the paint was coming off the wall. And so it was quite a game knowing what to do. Barbara loves flowers, but she's not the world's best gardener. So we knocked the bottom out of some of these ponds or pools or brick water gardens, whatever you call them, and filled them with compost, and then put a number of containers around the wall, and we put in an automatic watering system, like the hose lock one, with a computer on the tap that switches the water on at 6:15 each morning, nice early morning watering. And we set that up in April, and it wasn't touched until November. And I couldn't believe how stuff grew, especially the window boxes and the hanging baskets. You know, when things watered at that time to the right amount, in London, where of course it is pretty hot and dry, the growth was remarkable. Our only problem really was that the geraniums grew so well in Barbara's bedroom window box that she couldn't see out the window, and I had to go and prune them back so that she could see out of the bedroom windows in the morning. So I hope that answers your question. You can see how we can dodge the questions by going off into other directions, talking about other things. I was going to talk a little bit too about cuttings, if anybody's interested in rooting cuttings. Are there any more questions while we're at it? Let me just get this, one of those chrysanthemums.
Yes, certainly. Peter, we've offered both the
if I'm going to make up a pot as a raffle prize, then yes, I think that perhaps you should provide the pot. And oh, as big as that! This is a very good raffle prize, isn't it?
any plants you like.
And I've got compost there, and any plants I like. Boy, that's a job, isn't it? I'll need to think just a little bit about that. Well, I mean, you're Are all these people, Fred, all these people in the raffle, are they?
Have you all paid your money, folks?
So what should the pot be? Should the pot be flowering? Should it be fruity?
Right,
Or should
lady
it
over
be,
there.
or should it be herbs?
I should just say we're announcing the winners of the raffle at 3 p.m. today. So you'll be putting your phone numbers on if you can't stay that long.
You know, all we're looking for really when you plant a container is, for most of its attractive ornamental life, one and a half times the height of the container. Then you've got some kind of balance. But while I think about the container, and I think we should probably do something with summer bedding this time of year, I just wanted to talk a little bit about cuttings, taking cuttings. Because at this time of year, while many of us try to root things in March and April, when the nights are long and a bit cold, life is a bit difficult. It's much easier now, and a tremendous lot of things will root very quickly and very easily at this time of year. It is worth having a small bag of seed and cutting compost. You can use Universal, but Universal does have some plant food in it. Now this little yellow and green container has rooting hormone in it. When we take a cutting like that, this one has a flower bud in it, so I take the flower bud off. When we take a cutting like that, the cutting immediately knows that it's been damaged down here, and so the growing tip sends a message down that makes it produce hormones, and these hormones help the damaged part to callus. Just as if you cut your hand, you get a scab, it calluses. Now, these materials, rooting hormones, just supplement that. They are the equivalent of the hormone that's sent down, and so if you use a rooting hormone, it just speeds things up. You get roots much quicker, and you also get more roots. When I hear the people on television say they don't use rooting hormone, I know that they don't know what they're doing. And my wife leaves the room as I curse and swear. But if you are using rooting hormone, lots of people think that the green spike on the end of this is to use as a dibber, which you can use as a dibber, but it's much better really to just use it to stick in the compost, because then you could just shake a little of the rooting hormone powder into the top there, and that means that you don't dip the cutting into there. If this cutting happens to be a bit diseased in any way and you drop it into there, then you've polluted all of that. Whereas if you put a little rooting hormone there, you could just dab it on the end and you have just enough rooting hormone to do it. So you saw that I loosely filled the pot, firmed it a little bit, and then I like to use either some very dry sand or perlite. Sand and perlite just create much more air around the base of the root, and it's that air which helps again the wound to callus and to produce root. And if in the seed and cutting compost you just put that scattering of material over the top, when you get your dibber and you make a hole for your cutting, you push down a few of those granules as you go, and also as you take it out, some of the granules drop into the bottom of the hole, and so the cutting then sits nicely with a bit of air around it, with the rooting hormone, and with the moisture in the compost just right. Cuttings like that will root in about 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks on a really nice, warm, sunny windowsill. Now, you also need from the delicatessen a white polythene bag, not a clear one, because if you put this, your pots of cuttings in this on a really warm, sunny, south-facing windowsill. The white lets enough light through for the cuttings to generate food to produce its roots without scorch. If you put your cuttings in a clear polythene bag in full sun, which is what they need at this time of the year, then it will get very hot and you'll find the leaves will scorch. So once you have either one or several pots of cuttings, they go into the bag. I haven't brought with me a little stick, but a little stick in one of the pots, just so that it holds the polythene up off the cuttings, is a sensible thing to do. And then after 2 or 3 days, you just take the pot, open the bag, and you leave the cutting exposed for an hour or so, and you'll find that it will wilt. And as soon as it wilts, you just bring the bag up again. And when it stops wilting, when you take the bag off, you know that it's starting to form roots and you can leave the bag off altogether. So it's just as easy as that. All kinds of things you can root now. You know, the soft shoots on pentstemons, heliotrope, chrysanthemums, geraniums. With geraniums, you don't need the bag. You'll find they'll root quite easily. There's always an exception to every rule. In the case of the zonal and ivy leaf geraniums, you'll find that they should root okay without the polythene bag. Any questions on cuttings? Very well house trained here today. So perhaps I should have a go at planting up this container. If you are growing sweet peas cordon style, you know, I grow my sweet peas just as you would grow tomatoes on an upright stem. So that as the sweet pea begins to grow, every side shoot that comes between the leaf and the stem is pinched out, and the tendril is pinched out from the end of every leaf, and they're tied to a cane. My sweet peas are currently 8 feet high, and they're just at the stage when I cut them down and lay the stems along the ground, along the row, and then take them up again. And in a reasonable season, if it doesn't get too hot, the stems should reach about 20 feet. You know, they won't quite make the third time. but at every other leaf up the stem, then they're tied with raffia. But it's always soaked in water. If you soak raffia in water just for a few minutes before you use it, you'll find you can split it, you know, just as I'm splitting this one. And one strand of raffia will certainly tie, for me, about 20 or 25 sweet peas in a row. Now, is Fred still about? Because I'm going to need some plants here somewhere, aren't I? Shall we? Now, I'm going to need some plants to plant this, aren't I?
Certainly, Peter. What would you like?
So, what do you think we should have? Now, what colour are we going to go for? Are we into pink today? Or definitely into pink. So, shall we have a nice pink geranium to start with? We've got one there. Yes, we've got one already. Have you got a better one? No, well, Fred's got a better one for that.
I've got a better one.
He's got a better one. There you see.
It's got 2 flowers on it.
It's got 2 flowers, 3 flowers. Absolutely stunning. Just looking for the variety here. Classic night blues.
Get you some other stuff, please.
Have we got something? Got something small which is a bit silver, or what do we got? Can you see the difference in colour? It's quite dark here, and as it goes down, it's lighter. You know, this really needs a bit more water before you do the repotting. You know, I was talking about things being really nice and damp, and so in a perfect world, which I don't always live in, we have a little water. Oh, that's nice. That one, yeah. Now we're working.
And just bring in a...
Callocephalus.
Oh, now we're getting classy, aren't we? That's nice, I like that. So I'll try and practice what I preach. And I've taken the geranium out of its pot.
Yes.
I'll make sure that I've got that at the right depth.
Can I examine the wood?
Yes, I think that's the battery.
It's Chinese,
Is that better?
It's made in China, isn't it?
What me? I'm made in China.
I'll take it away for a minute and bring it back. You'll have to shout, please.
And if you can't hear, then will you just, tell me to shout, to speak up? I'll do my best. But honestly, I'm happier without it, I must admit. But it is aggravating if you can't hear. Now this is a peat-based compost, and of course there is some quite fierce argument about the use of peat composts. The interesting thing is that if you're using a peat compost, when you've finished and you do that, your hands are still clean. If you use some of the alternatives now, it looks as if you've been sweeping somebody's chimney. Sorry?
I don't think that's one of their arguments for us, guys.
Well, the interesting thing from my point of view is that currently sphagnum peat moss is growing faster in Northern Europe than we're using it. And now that in Siberia the permafrost is thawing, enormous areas of sphagnum moss are thawing, releasing methane, and there is a very good argument for using it and to get as many woody plants as we can growing in it. But they don't tell you those sort of stories. There we are. Now I can move quite comfortably, okay? So that's the easy way to do it, because then it just goes in there like that. Simple things, isn't it? Yeah. With the smaller plants, then I can scoop a hole. And I can give you another little tip too. If you're planting a hanging basket with wire and mesh sides, and you want to plant through the mesh, and you have quite a big plant, then it's a bit of a game getting that foliage or the root ball through the hole. Usually because I'm more interested, sorry I should show you, usually because I'm more interested in protecting the root than the top, I tend to get a piece of paper and then if you wrap the foliage is quite soft on things like this Lysimachia and things like fuchsias and lobelia. Once you've wrapped that up, you can squeeze that and push that through the hole without any sort of damage, and then when it's through you just take it off, and there you are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We're back in business again, are we?
I was trying to do it really quietly so I didn't disturb anybody.
14 very good cuttings here. Thank you. How are we now? That's better. Yeah. Was it the battery?
Don't know, Fred's been fiddling in the shed. Sorry. It's all right.
It wasn't me. No, that's right.
It does it every week.
He does it every week. Yeah.
Peter, there's water under the bench for you in a can.
Oh, perfect. Right. Sorry, I should have used that some time ago. You will forgive me, won't you? For not watering the geranium. I suppose I could take it out and water it again. No.
We'll remember, we'll think of that as done.
Now I quite like chicken for Sunday lunch, and I quite like the thyme, parsley stuffing, so I think that we'll put a nice little thyme plant in here. All of these plants will take a little drought. The creeping Jenny will be the first one to tell you what's going wrong, because as soon as that weed wilts, then you'll know that the rest need watering. And then a really nice silver plant.
What is that one?
A New Zealand plant, which I can't think, but he just said the name. Where's Fred?
Calocephalus, isn't it?
Calicephalus.
Yeah, my pronunciation.
Your knowledge and your pronunciation is perfect. Now there are people that will put a great deal more planting material in now. I'm not one of those. The time here will certainly this summer fill this edge. I would be very tempted to shear that lot, not just because it will give me 6 cuttings, but because it will also make it break and fill out. This one, if we have chicken every 3rd Sunday, will be trimmed enough to make that break. I could have done that, but it's a wise man who knows when he's had enough. Now, is that a reasonable raffle price?
That's lovely, Peter, thank you.
This will come up quite a bit taller at the back, and that's the way I would have it. These in the sun, this up here and there. And when these flowers go over, you just run right the way back, and there's that nice little rounded knuckle where you can snap it out cleanly, and you will need to do that. Keep a watch out, especially in August for caterpillars. You know, caterpillars can be a bit of a problem. So there we are. Another little practical tip that I might pass on. You need a dead match. It's got damp, so this won't strike anyhow. If you want to sow some of the larger seeds, particularly tomatoes, peppers, aubergines, space so that they come up, germinate, just an inch or so apart. If with water, so in the can, here they tell me. I'll just splash a bit on my bench. For the next demonstration, I'll make sure I've got my packet of seed. But if you just wet the end of a match like that, you'll find that one seed will stick very neatly to the bottom of the match, and you can transfer it and just pop it into the prepared compost, and then go back for another one. Actually, carrots grow very well in containers, particularly these tall containers. If you bought a rose with a 4-litre container, it will grow 12 really beautiful carrots. No problem with slugs, no problem with carrot root fly, especially if you make sure the compost is at least an inch down when you sow it, because the carrot fly, flies horizontally. When it hits the side of the pot, it goes up and across, and then by the time it drops down, it's gone past your pot of carrots. So with luck, you won't get the carrot fly. But you do need to space the seeds about an inch or so apart. If you leave them thicker than that, as the carrots swell in the pot, they will swell to such a degree that you have to cut the pot to get them out. And you will grow really good carrots. A full-size carrot root, a dozen of them, in the 3.5 or 4-litre rose pot. That's one size bigger than this particular container. If any of you are growing plants, tomatoes, peppers and things in grow bags, there's another little tip that I could give you about watering. Watering's not easy. as a young man on the show circuit, we used to do 40 flower shows a year in my late teens and early 20s. And on my first show, we used to grow the stuff back on the nursery, load the lorry, go off, and build these really quite, what we thought were eye-catching exhibits. And then when that was done, the show opened, we went behind the rope, and of course we face all the glorious British gardeners. And at my first show, I said to my boss, now, in the unlikely event of somebody asking me a question I can't answer, one has amazing confidence as a young person. Now I know I can't answer any of the questions. What do I do? And my boss said, it's very simple, lad. You say, did they water it? Don't be put off. Did they water it? If they did water it, it was too much, and if they didn't, it wasn't enough. Do you know, if you go to any question time, where there's a panel and a big audience, you watch them. Sooner or later, in the evening or the afternoon, they'll come back to that. Did they water it? Anyhow, if you're growing plants in grow bags, the watering is the key to it all. That's the difficult bit. And first of all, you put the grow bag down where you want the crops to grow, and shake the bag up so you've loosened the compost up a bit. And then whatever you do, don't make a hole in the bottom of the container. Some of you may have recently watched a program where I thought they were preparing sausages for the grill, where they punched holes all the way down fiercely into the base of the container. Now if you do that, when you've got 3 or 4 trusses of tomatoes on 2, leave alone 3 plants, and that peat compost gets dry, it's nearly impossible to re-wet it. As soon as you put the water on, it runs straight the way down and out through the bottom. And so what you do is, once your bag is flat on the ground and it's settled, 1/2 inch up from the base, you make 3 slits each side. Then when you water it, you have a 1/2 inch reservoir of water in the bottom of the bag. And of course tomatoes grow so fast that 1/2 inch reservoir is extremely useful. It gets you through really hot days. But then, how do you know when that compost needs rewatering? Well, this is where my piece of Sun newspaper comes in, because you need to tear a strip like that. Where did I put my pot? And then you press it with one finger of paper on the compost, and you count 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You'll remember that now, won't you? And you'll see the paper is damp, and that the compost doesn't need watering. Okay? If paper stays dry, then it needs watering. And after you've watered and left it for 20 minutes or so, it's worth, those of you with fairly slender hands and long fingers, slipping your hand under the polythene right into one of the corners and picking up just a bit of compost between your 2 fingers and pulling it out and having a look. Because very often, even though where you've watered is damp, in the far corners is still dry. And then it's worth getting the can, slipping the can right into those corners and getting a bit of moisture there. Some of the cheaper grow bags don't have any spreader in them. That's a material which just breaks surface tension and helps very dry compost to re-wet. So, you'll see moisture control, those words, on some of the composts, and that means that they have materials which help dry compost to re-wet. Where was I going? Yes. If you have bought a cheaper compost, if you are having difficulty getting the compost re-wetted, then 1 splash of washing up liquid, just a very small amount, in the can of water. And if the water is tepid rather than cold, you'll find that those 2 things will help the compost to re-wet a great deal quicker than just watering in the ordinary way. Okay? The other thing with watering is weight. If a plant is heavy, then the chances are the compost will be very wet. When I pick this up, I know immediately that it doesn't need watering. Now let's see whether I'm right or not. You see, it's not light, it's really dark. Sigh of relief.
Where's your friend actually?
But if you were to just stand this out for 24 hours and then pick it up, you'll find that it will be a great deal lighter in weight. After 3 days, it may even be blowing over and falling over. I've got about 600 plants, I suppose, something like that in containers. I grow a lot of new plants to ahead of their normal release onto the market. And when I see a pot starting to fall over or blow over, first thing I look at is the weight, and invariably it just needs re-watering. Yeah. Any questions on watering?
Do you ever use crystals?
Do I ever use crystals? I will use crystals occasionally where I'm growing a plant which will have a lot of leaf in a very small hanging basket. I don't use them anywhere else because I tend to recycle compost. Some describe me as mean. I prefer cautious. And if you use water retention granules, they're fine through the summer. But with a number of plants, in the winter, they can be a real nuisance. You know, if you're growing, somebody was asking about fuchsias not surviving the winter. Now, if you've grown fuchsias in a compost with water retaining granules, then in the winter that compost sits much too wet. But then, of course, if you get a really hard frost, that whole lot freezes and does enormous damage. So I use granules for a few things, short term in the summer, but wouldn't use it universally. Now, I mean, we've spoken about grow bags. If you've got 3 tomatoes in a grow bag, or a couple of courgettes, or cucumbers, or melons, or aubergines, or peppers, when they've finished in the autumn, then I just cut them off. I don't try and take the roots out, because with tomatoes especially, they make a very, very thick, dense root system. I just cut the plant off, and then I'll grow some salad leaves or lettuce in that bag through the winter. You know, you can sow that in October and pick that quite nicely. By March, it's pretty well shot. And so in April you can sow French beans. French beans grow very well following tomatoes and all of those tomato families, Solanaceae. And then when the French beans have finished cropping in August, that's the time to put in 12 strawberries. And the 12 strawberries will crop up to 3 years in a standard size grow bag, and by the 5th year you find the plastic perishes. Nothing lasts these days. And at that point I'm afraid you have to dig the compost into the garden. If you are reusing compost, as I'm afraid I do, then you obviously need to rotate crops a bit. You know, you don't grow tomatoes. As I've just done, tomatoes to lettuce to beans to strawberries. You know, you rotate the crops just as you would rotate them in the soil. And if you have a pest or a disease problem, well then certainly you don't reuse that compost. It tends to go out and is dug into my veg plot. So it's not thrown away. Yes, sir.
When we have Sophiniums are going very sticky, is that a sign of too much water or too little water, or? Sophiniums, yeah.
The petunias.
Petunias, yeah. Hanging up, yeah.
All petunias are a bit sticky. You know, the foliage is naturally sticky. Although they are beginning to breed it out. You know, we're getting hybrid things coming through which have petunia-like flowers, but which don't have that natural stickiness. What is much more likely, if they are particularly sticky now, is that you have aphids there somewhere. So if you look at the leaves and you see little tiny white flecks, almost like you know, combing your hair and having these white flecks on your shoulder. If you see those little tiny white flecks on the leaf, that's likely to be the skin of aphid, and where that happens, then the leaves will be extra sticky. But all petunias are a bit sticky. Yeah. Okay. And do we have any more?
Very successful with petunias.
Egon's going to do some floristry.
So now I'm going to hand over to artistry, colour, and all of that. And
Thank you very much.